The ink is barely dry on the U.S.-Iran understanding, and Israel is already rejecting one of Iran's biggest expectations: a withdrawal from southern Lebanon. Washington and Tehran have electronically signed an interim memorandum, with a formal ceremony expected in Switzerland on Friday, June 19th. The agreement extends their fragile ceasefire for 60 days, while they negotiate a permanent settlement. It is also supposed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway used by roughly a fifth of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas trade, and unwind the American blockade of Iranian ports. And Lebanon. That is where the wording starts to blur. Iran says a lasting peace requires Israeli forces to leave Lebanese territory. Israel says it never joined these talks. It is not bound by that demand, and its troops will remain in what it calls security zones for as long as necessary. The United States, meanwhile, says an immediate Israeli withdrawal was not a fixed condition of its agreement with Iran. So is Lebanon covered by the deal, or not? The honest answer is that different sides are describing the same document differently, and the full text still has not been published. Pakistan, which helped mediate, said the understanding would end military operations on all fronts, including Lebanon. Iranian officials have treated Lebanon as part of the wider settlement. But Washington has tried to reassure Israel that it still has the right to defend itself, while Netanyahu says Israel will keep both its forces and its freedom to act against Hezbollah. That is not a small technical disagreement. It is the central weakness in the whole arrangement. Why would Israel resist a deal that is supposed to lower the danger around it? Because Israel and the United States are looking at different clocks. Washington wants the direct war with Iran stopped, the strait reopened, oil supplies moving, and a 60-day window to negotiate the nuclear issue. Tehran wants the blockade lifted, oil exports restored, and sanctions relief placed on the table. Both governments have strong reasons to stop the immediate fighting first, and push the hardest questions in a later talks. Israel's clock is much more local. Its government says the positions it holds inside southern Lebanon create distance between Hezbollah and northern Israeli communities. From Israel's point of view, leaving before Hezbollah is disarmed or replaced on the ground by the Lebanese army would not remove the threat. It would simply move the threat back toward the border. But that creates the obvious question. What does Hezbollah say? Hezbollah argues that Israeli troops must leave first. Israel says Hezbollah must disarm first. Each side wants the other to surrender its leverage before it gives up its own. And a U.S.-Iran document cannot magically solve that sequence when neither Israel nor Hezbollah signed a bargain. A few facts show why this is so difficult. The current round of fighting intensified on March 2nd, after Hezbollah attacked Israel in support of Iran, and Israel responded with a much larger campaign inside Lebanon. A U.S.-brokered pause began in mid-April, but repeated clashes and strikes continued. By mid-June, Lebanese authorities said at least 3,783 people had been killed and more than 1.2 million displaced. Then came a narrower attempt to build something practical. At U.S.-mediated talks in early June, Israel and Lebanon agreed to work toward pilot zones, where the Lebanese armed forces would take exclusive control and Hezbollah would be excluded. In plain English, those zones are supposed to answer Israel's security question, without making an indefinite Israeli occupation the only answer. Sounds sensible. So why has it not solved the problem? Because announcing a pilot zone is easy. Putting Lebanese soldiers into damaged, contested areas, keeping Hezbollah out, persuading Israel that the arrangement is reliable, and protecting civilians while all of that happens, is much harder. The plan is a mechanism, not a result. And events since the U.S.-Iran announcement have made that painfully clear. An Israeli drone strike in Kfar Tebnit killed one person on June 15th. Hezbollah then reported new rocket and drone fire against Israeli forces. A day later, Israeli drone strikes killed at least 4 more people in southern Lebanon. The violence is lower than at the peak of the war, but it has not disappeared. So who is gaining leverage here? Washington gets the biggest diplomatic headline. It can say the direct U.S.-Iran conflict is paused, and that the world's most important oil choke point may reopen. But it cannot order Israeli troops off Lebanese ground as though they were American units. The United States has serious influence through weapons, diplomatic support, and its role in regional negotiations. But influence is not the same as command. Iran gains economic breathing room if oil exports resume, and it can keep pressing the Lebanon issue during the 60-day negotiations. Hezbollah gains a political argument from every Israeli soldier who remains inside Lebanon. It can point to the occupation and say disarmament would be surrender. But Hezbollah has also been badly weakened, and the destruction across Lebanon makes another full-scale round enormously costly. Israel keeps physical control of the security zones and avoids withdrawing under pressure from a deal it did not negotiate. But that advantage comes with a trap. The longer Israel stays, the more responsibility it carries for an open-ended presence inside another country, continued civilian harm, and a conflict with no clear finishing line. Was Netanyahu's refusal mainly a warning to Hezbollah or a message to Washington? Probably both. To Hezbollah, he is saying that the ceasefire does not erase Israel's military position. To Washington, he is saying that close allies still have separate security calculations, and Israel will not quietly accept language negotiated over its head. That is why this story matters beyond Lebanon. Big powers can agree to stop shooting at each other, but they cannot automatically settle every conflict connected to them. A bilateral agreement can create pressure, incentives, and diplomatic space. It cannot guarantee the cooperation of third parties who believe their immediate survival is at stake. And when the threat is a rocket position a few kilometers from your town, a promise signed in Switzerland can feel very far away. So what happens next? My read is that the U.S.-Iran arrangement survives the formal signing and the first part of the 60-day window, because Washington and Tehran both have too much to gain from keeping it alive. Lebanon will probably be treated as a parallel negotiation, rather than an immediate deal-breaker. Israel is likely to remain in its security zones, continue limited strikes when it identifies threats, and avoid a dramatic escalation that would openly wreck Washington's flagship agreement. But managed does not mean solved. One large Hezbollah attack, one Israeli strike with a heavy civilian toll, one failed attempt to move the Lebanese army into the pilot zones could restart a much wider exchange. The development to watch is not another speech. It is whether the Lebanese armed forces actually begin taking exclusive control of agreed areas, and whether both Israel and Hezbollah allow that process to continue. If those deployments happen and hold, a phased Israeli withdrawal becomes plausible. If they stall, the security zones could remain for a long time. Here's what I actually think. The Lebanon language was always the softest part of this understanding. It gives Washington and Tehran a way to say the regional war is winding down, but it does not yet contain a jointly accepted path for moving Israeli forces out or disarming Hezbollah. That does not make the agreement meaningless. It means the agreement has reached the edge of what Washington and Tehran can decide by themselves. The U.S. and Iran can shake hands, reopen shipping lanes, and lower the temperature between them. But on the hills of southern Lebanon, Israel, Hezbollah, the Lebanese state, and more than 1 million displaced people are still living with questions that no bilateral signature has answered. Do you think American pressure can eventually produce an Israeli withdrawal, or will the security zones become semi-permanent? Let me know your read in the comments. And if you got something out of this, please like, share, and subscribe. See you in the next one.